Hey, you wild women. I got a story for you. So sometimes how we choose these topics are based on kind of the things that I'm going through in life right now. And there's been some like weird energy of people coming in and out of my life and conversations that I really don't feel like I'm ready for. So it really got me reflecting on some things in my life, especially as an entrepreneur, that affected me, that made me a much better leader. And I'm going to talk about this on this episode because these are some mental shifts that made me go from mental to free, if you know what I mean. So, about 7 years ago, I got an unexpected phone call that instantly cued massive tears in the middle of a busy Starbucks. A lawyer was calling me to tell me that I was being sued. One of my former employees, someone I had mentored, supported, and treated like family, was suing me for wrongful dismissal. Now, the details of why she did this, I will leave out of this conversation, but just know that it was unwarranted. The dollar amount of the wrongful dismissal stung. But what was worse in all of it was the betrayal that came to surface as I did more digging and really understanding the situation. You see, to this day, but especially back then, I genuinely prided myself on being more than just a boss. And I actually hate the word boss. I treated my team like a family. There were late night phone calls because they needed something, emergencies during the day where they needed to, tend to their kids, or their kids had a Christmas rehearsal and they needed to leave work early, anything they needed. Our mentality was be the best version of yourself at work so that you do great work and we all have fun working together. And if that meant that you wanted to knock off early every Friday, then that's fine. So I actually created the agreements and the rules within our company based on what my team wanted. And it worked for us for quite some time. So when this lawsuit came in, it shattered me in more ways than just my bank account. It shattered my worldview of business and leadership and entrepreneurship. I said, I can't believe this is happening. This doesn't happen to someone like me. Why is this happening? The why? And in that time, I remember thinking, is this what I get for caring? Or maybe I should just become more cruel, cold, and calculated, just like everyone else seems. Those angry, mean bosses. And now I understand sometimes why people say, I have an angry boss or a mean boss, because there are moments in understanding this entire situation where leaders need to be stern. They need to be, quote, mean. And a stern, succinct, and valued leader will insult a victim. They will insult somebody who has a victim mentality. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So in that moment, which felt like maybe one of the lowest points in my entrepreneurial career, it turned out to be a catalyst for the most important transformation in my business. So I want to say at the time, screw you to this woman. And now I say thank you. I say thank you. It forced me to confront some hard truths about success, leadership, and what it really takes to build something meaningful. More importantly, it forced me to confront myself, because I will talk about this. When it comes to some legal stuff, most legal stuff takes a lot longer than you expect, and you want it to just end really quickly. But the secret wasn't about better business strategies or working harder, because working harder does not expedite a legal process. It came down to 3 fundamental shifts in how I thought about success, money, and opportunity. And I was journaling about this the other day. So these shifts completely transformed my approach to business and life, and I'm going to share them with you today. So what I learned throughout this lawsuit was changed everything. So when you're facing a legal battle, which part of me says I hope you never have to go through, but also part of me wants you to go through it because, if you want to be challenged in business, face being sued. You'll quickly discover in this process that you are made of more. You're more importantly, you learn what separates those who crumble under pressure from those who emerge even stronger. And that was me. I crumbled under pressure. I remember crying and kicking and screaming and asking myself, why me? I'm the nice person. I'm the nice leader. I'm the forgiving person. Why me? The reason for her dismissal was an accumulation of her toxicity in the organization. It was finding out that she was bullying somebody in my company who was gay. And not because of him being gay, but because of this being new to him. And I will say this, when you have this intuition, when you have the gray flag, the beige flag, and then the red flag about somebody in your company, let them go. Because the lesson I learned was 2 years of toxicity in place of avoiding that hard conversation of having to let somebody go can absolutely cripple an organization. So don't do it. Before I go on, though, I do want to say, to make sure that for you to know, this episode is not legal advice. It is for informational purposes only. So if you have any legal questions, go talk to a lawyer. I will not do that for you. This is informational purposes only. So take this with a grain of salt. So looking back now, the lawsuit, it wasn't just a crisis. It was actually an awakening. It was a gift. Because when somebody that I treated like family turned around and sued me, it forced me to go inwards and ask some tough questions. Like as a leader, I asked myself, was I too soft? Why should I be caring so much? Is this what happens to you when you lead from the heart instead of the head? Is this what happens when you don't face the demons of, potentially letting somebody who is toxic go sooner than they should? Yes, yes, yes. But the answer to most of those questions in terms of like caring too much, being too soft is actually no. Finding the answer required me to completely transform how I thought about business. And it also forced me to build a thicker backbone. So here are the three things. The first shift, which was the hardest, was, and the most important, absolutely, was moving from a victim mentality to a creator mentality. Pinpointing that we both had the victim mentality, but hers was much stronger than mine, was a realization that you cannot lead as a great leader if you're acting like the victim, because you become annoyed, short. You become the person that nobody wants to work for. So when I was sued, I spent weeks feeling betrayed, angry, sorry for myself, hurt, lied to, you name it, all the feelings. I had to ask myself, this is a question I actually asked myself, after all of this that I did for them and making sure that they had a great work environment. I'll tell you, one thing about this toxic employee was she complained so much about some of the tasks that she did, which were a requirement of her job, that we outsourced almost everything that she hated working on to everybody else on the team, to the point where the only tasks that she had to do were the only things she loved, and everybody else was doing her dirty work. I didn't even know, I was unconscious about some of this stuff because it was just a slow little feed of removing these tasks and giving it to other people on the team. We're like, yeah, no problem. I can do that. What example was I setting for them? So it got me thinking, if I'm treating her like a queen in this company, and man, she had the power and control over me, and she turns around and does this? Ha, 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 ha. $1 million mindset thinkers, $1 million thinkers, actually. They take full ownership of their circumstances and outcomes instead of blaming external factors. They ask, what can I create from this situation? They see themselves as active creators over their reality than passive recipients of circumstances. So instead of being a victim, become a creator. An example would be instead of pouring yourself into thinking why this happened to me, start creating things. Start creating systems that would not allow this to happen in the future. So that meant pouring into HR systems. It meant pouring into understanding how we can systematize everything to do with any touch point of the employee. to avoid this and come up with better ways to have conversations so that we can nip these issues in the bud. Maybe there was a point in my leadership that I didn't show up in the way that she needed, which is what caused her to do this. I don't want to blame me, but I am going to take full ownership of it. So here's what was really interesting about this shift is that it's not just business. And quite frankly, it has nothing to do with business. Because once you develop this creator mentality, you start applying it everywhere, right? Bad meetings, to lost a client, to poor parenting. So the big question becomes not who's to blame, but what can I create from this? It's not saying, why is this happening to me, and thinking everybody hates me and the world is crumbling, but taking a moment to pause and think, there's a lesson here. What can I create from this? And sometimes, if you believe in God and spirit, they'll test you. They put you in these circumstances because you need to create something. So this brings us to the second shift. It's equally as important, but different. So when you're facing a crisis like a lawsuit or something like this that's completely overwhelming, that causes you to cry and eat all your chocolate and drink all your wine, maybe, we always lean to those like quick fixes. For me, it was like whining and crying and avoiding important things in the business. You want the pain to stop immediately, and will numb the pain in ways that are not healthy, not sustainable, and sets a bad example. I often got myself looking for Band-Aid solutions. Like, I wanted this to just be over with. I wanted to go to bed tonight and wake up tomorrow and it's done. And it's not. Most legal things are so much longer than you think. Like, this actually took months and months and months, because one thing would happen and then my lawyer would come back, and then there was like 2 or 3 week delay, and then their lawyer would come back, and then there was negotiations and all this stuff. So here's what I realized in this is that short-term thinking is what was probably got me into this vulnerable place to begin with. I'd been so focused on growing fast and keeping everybody happy and not applying like growth tactics to a team and building robust systems or documentation that I felt myself just putting out fires more than I should. These are just baby fires, right? But baby fires, like a forest fire, once they come together, they make a massive fire. So when I started looking at the system of a business, as well as like the system of marriage and parenting, as something with 5-year impacts, even like 3-year impacts, instead of 5-minute solutions, it was a game changer. So the decision I had to make in that moment was, how is this going to change or affect my business in the next 5 years? So it's like putting on, glasses. Suddenly everything is clear. How you parent, it's like, how is this going to change the way this child shows up in the world in the next 3 years or the next 5 years? The decision to want to just nip it in the bud now. And I do this parenting too, because sometimes my kids will come up to me and say, can I go on my iPad? I just want to check this thing. It'll take 10 minutes. And it's clearly in a defined no iPad time. The moment I say yes is the moment now they have leverage. Because what I'm trying to avoid is I'm avoiding the monster of them whining and complaining and kicking and screaming, which will last an hour. But if I just give them these 10 minutes, right, they'll be fine. They'll be happy. And I caught myself doing this probably today. So these lessons are like, is this thing going to impact this, whatever this is, in the next 3 to 5 years? Is this decision today, the way I react, the way I act, the way I show up, going to affect my business in the next 3 to 5 years? So instead of rushing to get things done, I understood, okay, this is probably a long process. And I know the truth of the situation. With conviction, I know the truth. Plus, I had a really great team. I hired the province's best employment lawyer. I marched right into his office and I said, here's the circumstance. And he gave me so much relief knowing, like, this is what the process is. Here's what you can expect. It's not going to be done overnight. So in that, we developed new processes for employees, new conversations, new warnings, like, hey, they made this mistake, the conversation happens, or they're lagging. We give them warnings, like 2-week warning. If things don't turn around, we're going to have that conversation again. And it had such a compound effect doing this long-term thinking. So this then brings us to the final point of $1 million mindset shift. And this is just as powerful one that completely transformed how I do business and success. I call it moving from competition to contribution mindset. So going back to the lawsuit, my initial reaction was to get defensive, to fight back, to win. Like, let's do this. How dare you do this to me for everything that I do for you? And I went to bed ruminating on the story about how I could do this better, how I could show up tomorrow, and how I could make her feel like crap because she's making me feel like crap. It was so exhausting. It affected my sleep, affected my business, my relationship. You know what it's like. Like, I physically was getting sick. Part of me admitting this is kind of like, this is what she wanted. When you're a victim, when you have a victim mindset, a victim mentality, she was getting what she wanted and watching me suffer. So the breakthrough happened in a day. So I wouldn't say it was like perfect breakthrough, but what happened was, because I was kind of moaning about this and talking to my husband and complaining and not knowing what to do, he stopped me dead in my tracks one day. And he's like, there's no more new information you need to bring to our conversations when you discuss this. So here's what I ask of you. You don't talk about this to me anymore. You find a friend or somebody else, but this is not a conversation that's happening in this household. I was like, how dare you, right? Victim mentality coming back to play. So that sleepless night, I went to bed that night thinking, if the only person that I feel confident, comfortable talking about this situation told me to shut up, what am I going to do? Instead of focusing on the issue, I started thinking about why I got into business to begin with. To be creative, to create my own freedom, to create my own schedule, to work with who I want, to employ people, to give them opportunity, to see them soar, to create possibility. I stopped asking how I can protect what I have, and I started asking, how can I contribute more, right? From competition to contribution. It sounds simple, but it changed everything. Instead of seeing my employees or potential business partners as threats, I started to see them as opportunities for creating value. And instead of tightening controls, I focused on expanding opportunities for growth and development. Here's the fascinating part. The more I focused on this, contribution over competition, the more my business naturally expanded. See, when you're obsessed with competition, you're limited by what others are doing. You're always looking at what others are doing. So the possibility for you is as big as what they're doing because you only ever watch them. But when you focus on contribution, your only limit is how much value you can create. See how important that is? I think looking at your competition and studying them is important 100%. But if you're obsessing and only looking at them, that's the limit of your growth. So the shift, this counterintuitive approach with my team, instead of pushing for immediate decisions, I said, hey, listen, let's give you space and grace and let's think about this idea overnight. When it came to my marriage, now if we have some heated discussion, it is required as an agreement in our marriage that we sleep on it and we talk about it the next day or whenever it is a suitable time. Here's what's fascinating about this. Giving people that space to reflect, to really think through their decisions, it transformed my relationships. It sent a clear message that I cared more about and contributing to investing in long-term relationships and their well-being than any immediate need. So when you give people the gift of time and trust, they return it with a level of loyalty that no contract or agreement or bonus could ever fulfill. I remember one team member who was considering leaving in a competitive offer. Instead of trying to pressure him into staying, I told him to take a few days to think about it, to come back and tell me what would need to be true for his position in the organization for him to stay. And he returned back with not only the information that he wanted to share and what I needed to hear, he had put together a whole presentation. And he said, here's the trajectory of my career and where I want to be in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. And where do you see yourself helping me with that? And I said, holy crap. And it had very little to do with how much what he wanted to earn, but everything to do with the type of work he wanted to do and who he wanted to work with. Because I gave him space instead of him being like, hey, I have a competitive offer, so what do you think about it? I'm like, how about you go home and you tell me what needs to be true here for you to stay because I really liked having him there. So looking back, the lawsuit was the best thing that have ever happened to me. Not really. My kids are, and so is my marriage. But anyways, it forced me to make these crucial shifts from victim to creator, from short-term to long-term thinking, and from competition to contribution. Together, these shifts didn't just help me survive a crisis. It helped me build something bigger than I had ever imagined possible. And here's what's really exciting is that all of this is available to you if you're willing to make them. You don't need to go through a lawsuit or a major crisis to take these shifts. You can actually just do it today. Regardless, if your life is perfect, you can do these today because you're going to end up facing big crap sandwiches in life. And if you can start to inherit these mental shifts, then everything will just fall into place. Another example is last fall, we were driving around with the kids, and the next morning they had soccer or something. And I get into my car and I go to reverse, and it's telling me that there's a flat tire. And I'm like, oh my God, well, what am I going to do now? Good thing we have another vehicle. So keep the car in the garage with the flat tire. And I'm like hustling to bring these kids somewhere. In the moment, so old Renee, victim, would have been like, oh no, I have to cancel everything and I have to deal with this and blah, blah, blah. New Renee was like, wait a second, we have support at home. Betty, our house manager, call her up saying, Betty, my car has a flat tire. I don't know how to deal with this right now, but I need my car by tomorrow. Can you manage this? Sure enough, tomorrow, same time, my car was delivered with a fresh new tire because she knew how to manage it. I would have lost sleep overnight. It's still a silly thing. So in adopting this mentality of saying, this is happening for me, not to me, and telling myself over and over again, it helped me manage these stupid situations. So all this to say is like, it's all about building yourself up to having a life that's fulfilling and that where you feel successful in it. So success isn't just about what you do. We know this. It's about how you think. In order to be successful, you have to think differently. And these mental shifts aren't just nice ideas. They're actually, and I know this to be true, fundamental differences between those who stay stuck and those who break through to new levels of success. Because I've lived through the transformation. And by the way, you might get to a place where you've adopted these 3 mental shifts and you still need to expand and grow on these as you grow. Because the CEO of $1 million business has a different mindset than the CEO of a $100 million business. So if you're going to grow to be that person or whatever that version is in your life, you need to grow these 3 mental shifts. They need to be evolving. So I'm going to leave you with this one question. Which version of yourself do you want to be? Is it the one who is trapped in old patterns of thinking? Or the one who makes these shifts and transforms not just results, but your entire approach to success? And I want to remind you, if you are having a tough time with this in your life, with recognizing that either you're a victim or somebody in your life is a victim mentality. That's what I mean, victim mentality. You're recognizing this in yourself or somebody else that's maybe important in your team or in your life. If you're having problems understanding how to go from competition to contribution, come out to Kelowna, BC on June 12th for my event, The Pink Skirt Project, because you are going to be surrounded by such inspiration that you will just absorb these mental shifts naturally from the women that are in the room, from the keynote speakers, and the cool activities that we have planned. So go claim your ticket now, thepinkskirtproject.com. Join us on June 12th in Kelowna, BC. Until next time, ladies, peace out.